And I would like to invite any questions from the floor and online, please. Just 3 rows up, please. And then after that, just a couple more rows up.
Hi there, a question for Christoph. The movement of mercury and other metals around the sediment, to what extent might that be biologically mediated in relation to enrichment polychaetes, for example, which I understand are quite common on the tops of these cutting spiles?
This one. Okay. We know that there is some biological activity within the depths of cutting spiles, but to sort of point the finger at just one thing, I believe, sort of wouldn't tell the entire picture. That there is, or there might be, an influence of certain microbial activities on general movement. I'm not in a position to sort of to say that that's not the case. However, I'm not a huge fan of saying that within, 2 meters of going to heavily oil-contaminated sediment, that you'd find something that sort of lives in complete anoxia and still has the time to start moving lead downstairs or upstairs. I wouldn't be able to, at this point in the research, give you a definitive answer on that.
And that one here.
Thank you. Yes, that's a question for anyone on the panel. No one mentioned climate change, and I wondered if you could maybe talk about whether it's norms or plastics or bioavailability of contaminants, the drill cuttings, better or worse with warming sea temperatures, changes in bottom kinetic energy, ocean acidification. I don't expect it gets better. And I suppose also maybe if a parallel related question is impacts of removal on drill cutting resuspension piles. Does anyone want to say anything about that risk? 2 questions, I guess. I cheated.
So as a quick answer to the first one, when it comes to methylmercury, as far as I know, is from a strictly chemical perspective, we know that an increase in temperature of the water and a decrease in pH results in a higher bioavailability. I might be corrected on that, but that's sort of my point of knowledge.
And anyone from the rest of the panel want to take that?
I would say I'm not certain for plastics, as I haven't looked into it specifically, but I would imagine you're right that it's not going to get better. I'd imagine that the degradation processes would probably be faster if we had warming seas and more bottom sediment movement and things like that. But I think for plastics, the key thing is the mineralization. If it were able to mineralize the plastics, that might be good. We don't know enough about that yet, but plastics is going to be, the amount of plastics we put in the sea is going to remain the same regardless, unless it can mineralize.
Online, Tom and Darren, anything to add to that question?
Yeah, I might add, I guess from my perspective, certainly climate change is going to be influencing water chemistry and bioavailability, but I'd mentioned that we're still not there yet in terms of estimating what the risks are, the true risks are for mercury and norm today. So I think we need to get those through first and understand bioaccumulation, methylation potential in sediments, and then factor in climate change. My 2 cents.
Our framework does provide allowance for the assessment of climate change related impacts, and we recommend it as part of a multiple pressures consideration. So likely worse is my impression. I don't know contaminant specific how it's going to interact, but certainly the addition of pressures on a receiving environment might not be the greatest thing.
And from the room, please. May I ask, when you take floor questions, introduce yourself with your name and organisation, please, just for online viewers.
Okay. Hi, Bert Fokkema. I work for SSE. My question is for Sarah. Comes out of my previous life when I worked for Shell. Sarah, wonderful to see the progress and the beautiful yellow lines there on your pictures. I noticed that we are still making progress. There are sort of crude scenarios, and we are sort of thinking what's next. And then one of your slides said precautionary approach until we know more. When you're so early in the day, what does precautionary approach mean, according to you? Just interested in your opinion.
I think it's a really challenging one, the precautionary approach. I think But I think where we were going with that is that because we have made so many assumptions and this data is all based on so many assumptions and so much unknown, we need to just tread carefully. I don't think we should be necessarily being precautionary in terms of making decisions to take things out just in case. I don't think that's what we mean by it. And clearly the thing I forgot to say, because I got panicked about the time, was that plastics is one thing. There is so much more to feed into all this decision making that it's we can't be thinking about plastics and if it was just down to the plastics and there was nothing else to consider, we would probably be saying it would make sense to take it out because that would be the best precautionary approach where we don't understand because we think the risk is there, but it's not just down to that, and it's a huge amount of extra other things that have to go into this comparative assessment process. So I think precautionary in terms of we need to know more before we can before we can say we're making any decisions on a robust basis, but yes, maybe it's hard to be precautionary when it's like this, I think.
Just at the back there.
Hello, question for Sarah. I'm Louise from Subsea 7. Your research is just fantastic, but gosh, it makes me want to hit my head against the wall. We install so many pipelines and cables at the moment. What's the next stage of your research? Will it continue? Just wondering.
I hope so. At the moment, we have no more funding. We would like to continue, so if anyone wants to fund us, then that would be fab. But we would like to continue to work to try and get some more empirical samples. I think that would be the next thing to do, would be to actually try and get some more samples from the environment, particularly things like the large rigid pipelines with we don't know enough about the concrete weight coating and how that might degrade and how that might affect the polymer degradation. So having samples back from the environment where we can actually run experiments and look at that kind of thing would be really good. But also then moving on to thinking about the questions around what do we do with it? Is it better to leave it in the environment versus put it in landfill? And how do we progress on to recycling and actually responsibly removing it and using it rather than just having to dispose of it, and better design and all of those kind of things would be really interesting to dig into more as well.
Any further questions from the floor? I'll ask a question then to the entire panel. So, where or what opportunities do you see that there's a need for greater collaboration across all of these contaminants and all of these issues, which is an incredibly complex environment? Where do you see them? Where are the most feasible? And if you had unlimited money or a genie, where would you put that effort to? Whoever would like to start.
I think maybe our Australian colleagues have something to say.
Yeah. Tom and Darren, can I pass to you?
Oh, look, unlimited budgets. In Australia, at least, contaminants are a major issue, and our contaminants are going to be quite similar to your contaminants. And although the environment's a little bit different, there's learnings that we can all share from different environment types. So I think there's a lot of progress that needs to happen on the norm, the mercury, the plastic, steel corrosion products, cutting spiles, you name it, to build confidence, particularly with stakeholders, that will allow more optimal solutions for this end-of-life infrastructure management and decommissioning. Because at the moment, the Australian approach is very much on risk mitigation, which falls to the precautionary principle, which is remove everything, because we haven't done that legwork to demonstrate the alternative is acceptable. So, it's my research area, so call me biased, but I think it's the contaminants piece.
I guess so. You brought up collaboration. So having also worked in the same realm as Darren and Tom, I know that there's amazing work coming from Australia, and I guess they also appreciate some of the stuff that we produce locally, I hope. But I think this type of sharing of knowledge about something that, because it's not something that you have created in a laboratory setting, it grew naturally over time in environments. And yeah, of course, the mercury is elementally the same between Scottish mercury and Australian mercury, but the environment and how it sort of built up and produced the matrices and minerals that it is found in It is so incredibly complex that sorting that out and, in my opinion, updating the way that statutory requirements do risk assessment nowadays, which, in my opinion, is a bit too ancient. I don't know, if throwing money at that issue would solve it, then, get throwing. But yeah, no, I'd like an update, and I guess Australia and the UK have been collaborative on these things quite successfully so far.
Sarah, anything to add?
Yeah, I think I would just reiterate what everyone said. I think the collaboration is really, really vital and really rewarding as well, and not just collaboration between us as scientists, but collaboration that we've had with industry is incredibly valuable. We wouldn't have got to where we got to with our project. We wouldn't have had nearly as much understanding unless we collaborated with the industry. So having those partnerships is really valuable, as well as the cross, international partnerships and sharing of work and best practice, I think is all fundamental. There's no point us all doing things in our own little pockets and replicating. Having that cross-working is definitely the way forward.
Brilliant. I'd like to thank my panel and all the speakers for this session, please.